Okay, 7:16, I now call to order the October 19th, 2023 meeting of the Sherborn Conservation Commission. We will have I guess I move to open the meeting. Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay, and then we'll have a roll call vote. In this case, everybody announce your name and your vote. Michael Lesser, aye.
Kurt Stiegel, aye.
Courtney Eck, aye.
Jacob Strauss, present.
Carol McGarry, aye.
And O'Leary, aye.
Okay. We got 6 out of 7 now. Oops, we're getting more people.
Terry Luskin, present.
Oh, that's true. As a associate member, welcome. Okay. Let me make Courtney a co-host here. Okay, we have the agenda. I want to move to I want to move to amend the agenda for 2 items that came up just in the last 24 hours. One is submitting comments on a bill in the legislature related to local wetland regulations and the affordable housing Chapter 40B law. We could talk about it later, but that's something where we can comment on, and it's due next week, so we have to deal with it today. And the second thing is that there's I was just notified the same day that yesterday, or 36 hours, that there's a grant opportunity to apply for. It's not a lot of money, but to do some speakers related to sustainability and open space, that if we could send a letter of support to support the proposal that's going to be put together with the sustainability coordinator. So I want to talk about that and see if we want to agree to send a letter of support for that. So I would like to move to add these 2 items because they're timely. Time is of the essence to address them.
Second.
Okay.
Second.
Okay, between the 2 of you. Any discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Jacob?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Matt?
Aye.
Kurt?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Okay, agenda has been amended. Okay, we have 1 minute before our one thing on here on permit hearing tonight, or one of several, but the others are going to be continued.
Michael, do you see that Kelly has raised his hand?
Yeah, I sort of see that little hand up in the air. I thought he was scratching something. It's a very small picture. Yes, Kelly.
2 things. The land management report is very brief, but important because there's a new piece of information. I wonder if we could do that just no more than 2 minutes up front. And the second would be, actually, I'll pass on the second.
Okay, as long as the people, I guess you're the same people who are here for the hearing, for the RD on the boardwalk. If you guys don't mind being delayed a little, you can go, you could do that thing first.
Just wanted to comment that I got a text from Sean this afternoon. Everything has been mowed and dealt with in accordance with plans. He's going to do Peters Hill, which has never been mowed. And at Ted's recommendation, he did not mow the middle field at Barber. It always has been mowed. This has been discussed a couple of times to use that as an experiment in habitat enhancement. Since it's a case of not mowing rather than doing it, if the Conservation Commission disagrees, it can be done. But it was a recommendation. Courtney and I certainly support it. See what happens with it.
And
Okay.
the field edges will still be mowed to control invasives, but the middle of the field is relatively invasive free. Other fields, it was not a good idea to avoid mowing them because of all the invasive pressure. So just that field.
Okay. I know at some point, I guess we'll get some reporting from Ted about the whole big picture of
Oh,
things.
yeah, and a couple of issues will be coming up, but that's for another meeting.
Okay. Well, if that's the advice of our experts and the two of you like it, and it sounds like it makes sense, I'm okay with it. Does anybody on the commission have any questions about it or I would say go visit. You can go visit the field and you can certainly bring it up at the next meeting.
Yeah. I suspect there will be questions about it from the public. And I just want the commission to be aware that it's an expert recommendation that was considered and approved.
Is there a way of posting something in the board there about that?
Certainly need to figure out what to say and how to do it, but that's a very good idea.
Okay. I leave it to you to figure that one out. Okay. Anybody have any more questions about that? Okay. In that case, I will start. Notice is hereby given that the Conservation Commission of the Town of Sherborn will hold a virtual public hearing using Zoom technology at now 7:23 on the 19th day of October 2023. The request for determination of applicability hearing, RDA, will be held pursuant to Chapter 131, Section 40 of the General Laws as amended, the Wetland Protection Act, and the Sherborn Wetlands Bylaw to consider a proposal by the Town Forest Committee for work related to the construction of an 80-foot section of boardwalk within a wetland buffer zone at 7 Butler Street, map 10, lot 103A. This application is available for viewing at the Sherborn Conservation Commission. All persons desiring to be heard will be given the opportunity to speak at this hearing. Okay. How do you want to present this?
Can I share my screen?
Sure.
Are you able to see my,
I
Yep.
can.
okay. So this is 7 Butler Street is the DPW property, and the Town Forest Committee has submitted a request for determination of applicability for trail maintenance, which is basically a boardwalk along this section of the Bay Circuit Trail. So the town garage is here. The trail runs from Elliott Street to North Main as it goes through the property. And again, there's a pond that sits right here. And because there's been no maintenance of the pipes that go under the trail, the pond during strong seasonal storms overflows the trail and has caused a wet spot. So the Forest Trail Committee would like to install a boardwalk that goes over this trail. And there's a wetland stretch that has been created by this overflow. The pond sits over on this side. It's a stretch of, it's about 41 feet of a low wet area. It's only wet during certain times of the year when it rains. The rest of the time it dries up and it's accessible. It's their proposal is to put in a 3-foot wide boardwalk that crosses this section of the trail. The boardwalk would look something like like this right here. This is a sample of what it would look like. There'd be 6x6 ground beams with boards that sit on top. They would be, as much as they can, cut outside the buffer zone and brought into place and assembled. We're not sure it can be done in sections, or if it will be done simply in the ground as it is, but as much of the cutting as possible will be done outside the buffer zone. They plan to do the majority of their transport from the end of Obed Lane and then coming up the trail. There's no trees that are going to be cut. There's no excavation. This is just placed on the side of the trail that still allows horses to go on one side. This is used by bikes, pedestrians, and horses. So the horses still have an opportunity to bypass it. And if it's ever a time when they work to fix this pipe, the boardwalk can be dismantled, moved, and temporarily and put back in place after the fact. It's really a simple operation.
Okay. And then what conditions are you suggesting?
So the hope would be that, well, the wood that's going to be used as the base, the treated wood, one of the conditions, this is one of the things you looked into, Michael, was the micronized copper treatment, which is something typical of Home Depot or Lowe's, that it wouldn't be any other type of treatment that might be hazardous to the environment. And then whether or not the materials are cut in the buffer zone, they need to be done. It needs to be done in such a way that the sawdust or shavings can be, whether it's done on a tarp and then they can be removed, so that there's no sawdust or shavings in the buffer zone or the wetlands. There really isn't any there's no tree removal. There might be a couple of shrubs that get trimmed that overhang the trail, but it's very minimal. And then the last condition was that upon completion, that the Conservation Commission would have the opportunity to inspect it.
Does anybody else from Town Forest or other people there, guests here, want to add to this? Hearing none. Oh, yeah, Dave?
We're happy with the design. We're happy the work that Joyce has done. And, I went to DCR to get this plan and this picture. So they use it a lot in the state. So that's why I picked this one. And James's father did some design
No,
on also.
thank you, James' father.
I'll thank him for you guys.
Okay. Yes, that's what we need we need everybody to work together. Okay, I'll bring it up to the commission. Anybody on the commission have any questions or comments?
Well, I think it's great that you guys are putting in a boardwalk over a wet section of trail, and it seems like the base circuit trail gets used a lot. So that's fantastic. And it's really a minimal project. It sounds like it's all covered in terms of the details. So I got nothing else.
Yeah, James?
Yeah, I would just say it's gotten so wide there based on this issue and people trying to skirt the edges that I don't even think any trimming of bushes or anything needs to be done, even pushing this thing up to the side. So, I mean, I appreciate that was put in there, but I think we can do this with really zero interruption. And I live just down the street on South Main, so we'll do all the prep work at my garage and driveway, and then just bring materials over from there. But yeah, I mean, sounds like no one objects to it, but it's a tough spot without passability through there. People using the Bay Circuit Trail are forced to the road. So it'd be great to get this back to something that people actively are able to use. So I appreciate everybody hearing us out.
Oh, no, I agree with what Courtney and you said. It's an important trail, and it'd be great to improve it like this, and make it easier for people to use. So anybody else on the commission have any questions or comments?
No, just that I agree. It looks like a good project.
Okay, then I move, oh, anybody else from the public want to speak? Always forget to do that. Okay, I see the fingers. The
Not
appropriate
those kind of fingers, they're thumbs up.
Yes, exactly. Sorry. I misspoke. Excuse me, everybody. The, and it's recorded too. Okay, then I move to approve the project, let it go forward under a -3 determination with the conditions discussed. Do I have a
Second.
second? Okay. Any further discussion?
I just
Well-
want to thank everybody who's making the project happen.
Roll call vote. Whoops. Michael, I, Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Okay. Start work in 10 days. With the appeal period. So, or you could start your work now, but whatever. Thank you for doing it. And I guess we'll be talking about other things in the future, near future.
Awesome. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Yeah, thanks.
Bye-bye.
So we're gonna put this out for signatures. It will go out. What is today? I'll put it in the. Deborah, what are we using for a blue box now? I don't see any box outside the back door.
It's out there. I
Okay.
put it out today.
It's not
Excellent.
blue anymore, right?
No, it's not blue.
Well, I'm gonna call it the blue box. And so I will put this out there tomorrow by lunchtime. And if you all could sign it as you have time.
We'll call the box X from now on.
Does the 10-day period that they have to wait, because if somebody could appeal,
They could.
tonight, does that start tonight or when we actually have it all signed?
It's supposed to be when you issue it, but it's at their risk.
Oh, I guess that's right. So they could just do work. It's just a matter of the risk. Okay. In this case, not a lot of risk. But okay, everybody.
If they're doing the prep in James's garage,
Right.
you know, they could certainly start things.
Yeah, I think we have a decent amount of offsite work to do
Yeah.
before we go anyway. So
That should cover it.
okay.
No, I was just curious that issue of whether whether our delays in signing, how much that difference makes. But okay.
We're all gonna sign. It's gonna be
Okay,
great.
and I won't have to send out a text next week. I could already see that not happening. Well, Tuesday will tell, or maybe Monday. Joyce is going in then. Okay, so we've got that though. Let's go back to, now, is Kelly still here?
Yeah.
Is there, what other land management do we have?
Nothing.
Okay,
Do we
Nothing.
have more? We have more things coming in, maybe for the next meeting?
Not for the next meeting, but for the meeting after.
Okay,
Okay. Now,
Cool.
there are some real decisions that need a little more preparation.
got it.
okay. Okay, then, let's see, going back to our agenda here. Let's start moving through some of the discussion items between now and 7. We got a little bit of time here. Most of the remaining hearings are going to be continued, so we just have a number of discussion items that'll take a bit of time. Actually, let's see, in terms of who's here.
164 Forest Street.
Yeah, I told Tom that it'll probably be closer. He was gonna tune back in around 10 to 8. So I'm
Okay.
not sure, but unless he hears me now, Tom. Okay, in terms of other items that people are here for. Oh, there he is.
If you guys want to, if you want to squeeze me in now, that's.
Sure, let's squeeze
happy
you in. I'm happy to try to get people
Yeah, we'll do it.
onto their evenings without us.
Great.
So, it's yours.
So fairly straightforward. I represent the owners of 164 Forest Street, which has been encumbered by a conservation restriction for approximately, I think it's about 30 years or so. And what was reserved from the original conservation restriction were 5 building envelopes, 4 of which you can see shown along Forest Street in the sort of combination of sort of squarish, triangular sections. 2 on the so as you're looking at the screen on the left, that's property that actually has been conveyed in fee to the trustees of reservations, and 2 building envelopes have been reserved from that portion. And then moving to the right, 2 additional building envelopes, that one just above the circle that has 2A in it. So just above that, roughly a square shaped. And then skipping over the other one that has an X in it. Exactly. That's the 4th one. What we've been working on for quite a while, the state office that oversees approval of conservation restrictions has been very, very backed up. But it's the amendment is simply the elimination of those 4 building envelopes. That's all that's proposed right now. There is a right to construct a single family residence within each of those 4. And the property owner at 164, together with the trustees of reservations as the owner of the parcel given to them by the 164 owner, want to eliminate all 4 of those building envelopes. We have been working with the trustees of reservations for the better part of 2 years, and the long time period is attributable to staffing issues at the Department of Conservation and Recreation Office at the Commonwealth. So procedurally speaking, I'm before you to ask that the Conservation Commission vote to recommend that the Board of Selectmen sign the restriction. The restriction is a multi-party document. It's the parties to which are the owners of the property to be impacted by the restriction, the town of Sherborn, and the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So the trustees of reservation and the owner have reached an understanding. It's a fairly straightforward amendment. It comprises all of a couple pages in its operative terms. So we would, the typical approach is to ask that to come to the Conservation Commission first. And so that, and I have I'm on the agenda for the Board of Selectmen meeting on November the 2nd. And I'd like to be able to tell them that I came to this board first. So I'd like to ask for a vote to recommend that the Board of Selectmen approve and then sign the restriction document itself.
Okay. You've had, I think those documents are actually in the folder for everybody to have seen.
Yep.
So that was made available to everybody here. It sounds like an absolutely wonderful improvement from our point of view in terms of maintaining open space. So to me, it's a wonderful change.
Yes.
If anybody else has any questions or comments?
Especially, is that part of that parcel along the Charles?
Yes. So when you the Forest Street, it is sort of on one side. The property that we just described is on the other side of Forest Street, and then on the other side of the property is the Charles River. Exactly, and a lot of what is on the other side of the property on the Charles River that abuts the Charles River is also restricted as well, and much of that is also owned by the trustees of reservation.
Yeah, I think that's really important land for many reasons, flood control and so many open space reasons.
Exactly. I mean, the four houses there, all the runoff that would, and all the, the pervious ground that would be lost from that, especially in the vicinity of the Charles River. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah. So
Had a couple
almost,
questions.
yeah, sure.
One is, are all of these building envelopes, they're currently all empty? I think they
Yes.
are, but okay. And then
Yes, the four that contain X's, which are those to be eliminated. If you drive down Forest Street, you'll see nothing.
right, that's what I thought. Okay.
But the development rights are there and they are exercisable, and they're fairly easy A&R plans that, they all have adequate frontage. There's certainly enough size. And so the right to construct anything within any of those four envelopes would be eliminated in perpetuity.
And the other question I had was just curious as to sort of why the Conservation Commission here. Is it just to oversee that the restrictions are being upheld as expected, or is there a proximity to wetlands also? I mean, aside from the Charles River on the other
It's
side.
more of an advisory role to the select board on the value of the conservation restriction.
Okay,
Yeah.
yep, that makes sense.
Sorry, Tom, I didn't mean to interrupt. Is that
No, thank you. No. And I mean, in I'm a local guy, and so in Natick, Sherborn, Wellesley, Dover, every time I have a conservation restriction, I always come to the Conservation Commission first. Just the pattern that I followed in the last 20 years that most people follow, which is to come to the Conservation Commission, and then to be able to, before we come to first, and then to be able to say to the Board of Selectmen that we did appear before the Conservation Commission, and they understood all the facts and circumstances, evaluated, and recommend that the board sign the actual amendment.
Yeah, I just wanted to comment on that I think we have a tendency to just, focus on the wetland regulation, but part of the charter of conservation commissions is to look at, natural resources in the town and advise the town. So that you're coming to us in that role.
Exactly.
Any other commission comments? Anybody from the public want to comment on this? Commissioners can still do it. I see the physical comment. I don't think it's conflict of interest since I'm a neighbor to these things, so it's all the area to me. I'm probably there 6 out of 7 days of the week. So it is wonderful. Okay, then there's no other further commenting or questions. I move that we recommend to the select board that they sign the new restriction documents, if that's the appropriate wording. Did I get it right, Tom?
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
second?
thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Jacob.
Aye.
Okay, thank you. This is one welcome news.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Go for it. Do you, I guess we should write a formal note to the select board for that, attesting to this vote, I guess.
That would be in whatever whatever communication that is customary between the Conservation Commission and the Board of Selectmen would be helpful. So it's not just taking me at my word when I appear before them in a couple of weeks. I'd appreciate that. Thank you.
Okay, Joyce, do you mind just writing a little memo to Jeremy and the chair of the select board, saying what we voted on at this meeting?
We'll do that.
Okay, great.
Thank you, Joyce. Thanks, everybody.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
For all the work. Okay, well, that was nice news.
A feel good kind of night.
Yeah, exactly. That's true.
Restrictions.
Yes, I never realized in that property that I live next to, that there were even those 4 developable lots.
Oh my goodness, maybe you should have recused yourself as an abutter, Michael.
No, I don't about this town.
Oh, he's quite
There's
a bit.
There's
Just a
town
couple.
forest between me and it.
Good.
So, but I don't have I don't have a conflict in the sense that there's a financial stake, I guess. So I sort of said it just to make it clear that I'm near. Okay, moving on. Let's see here. Let's see, we got rid of that one. Got rid of the barber. Is there any particular warrant? I didn't see an actual warrant in the file. Was there something that we wanted to review, Deborah?
Yeah,
There was one submitted last week.
Okay,
Let me see if I can bring it up.
I know there were some old bills that got paid from a different fund.
Yeah, I won't be able to bring it up because it's on my other computer.
But I think the amounts were fairly small and it was related to land management costs for signage and things like that. Okay,
Correct.
just wanted to let everybody know that we had those kind of bills.
approximately 230
Okay,
from the company Bestcon.
right. There was some signage, and it was signage done a long time ago. Some of it
Yeah,
was. for some reason-
Backs and blueprint.
Right. Okay, then, let's see, moving on here, let's see, I'm gonna try to cover. I'm gonna bring up, maybe I'll do the minutes later. What I want to bring up is a quick item or two. Let's see. I don't know if anybody had a chance to look at the files there. There is the mini grant that Land Conservation Networking mini grant request for proposals that's under DCR at the state level, where we can apply for grants to help support education, public speaking. And the town wants to do a collective thing with the support of open space, maybe groundwater, I can't remember all the different groups. And the sustainability coordinator is going to put in a proposal with letters of support for different groups in town to do stuff about sort of to add to the ongoing educational presentations that are going on in town around sustainability. There's some stuff about open space, and I think I forgot what Dorothea, our coordinator, said she was going to put in for the mix for what kind of speakers we'd bring in, but some of them about pollinators and such. So I would propose, we can go more into it if people want, or I would just move that we write a letter of support for the proposal by the sustainability. Well, actually, I'll just write a letter of support for submitting a proposal to this Land Conservation Networking mini grant. Open space, let's see, trying to figure out how they call it.
Michael, can I?
Yeah.
I actually met today. I'm on the Pollinator Pathway group. It's a little volunteer group, and we met with Dorothea, and we were brainstorming lots of different potential speakers. And for instance, there's a couple of authors who wrote a book about native plants for New England gardens. We were thinking about people who know about pollinators as speakers. One thing I did bring up, and this doesn't necessarily bear on the grant, but I did bring up the fact that, we had those wonderful surveys of the conservation lands and the reports. And then part of that, which I think we already paid for, was a presentation about the habitat on those properties. And I did, Dorothea was saying she was looking at the calendar and asking the Pollinator Pathway group for suggestions. And I said that I thought Conservation Commission, it would be great if Conservation Commission organized to have those folks speak. I think a lot of people would love to know what's out there. And also there was some video, some kind of cool video with some of their wildlife cams. So I'm just bringing those couple of things up. But the examples of speakers that fall under the mini grant would be, people like the authors I mentioned to maybe Ted Elliman to talk about, how to deal with invasive plants. We were talking about the idea of lawn management in the spring. Like, how do you do lawn management that isn't harmful to the wetlands and to pollinators? In our case, we were talking about pollinators.
Mhm.
Just to give everybody a flavor of the kinds of things we were thinking about. It's a wide variety because it's for the the 350th anniversary. So they're doing a bunch of other things as part of it that are related to history or just town spirit,
Right. This is not a lot of money. It's basically $700 for speaker fees. That could be, or some advertising.
Yep.
Does anybody else have any questions before I move something? Okay, I'll go back to my motion. I move that the Conservation Commission write a letter of support for the proposal for this grant.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, aye. Courtney,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Steve.
Aye.
Okay. Maybe we could coordinate on the amount of time you have, Joyce, but let's see if you could also write a letter. That's something.
To who?
Uh,
To who?
I guess you got to talk to Dorothea how she wants it,
Okay,
how she wants it worded or set up. It's 7:53. So we're gonna have to do some scheduling for our next meeting, Joyce. I am now reopening the continued public hearing on the request for determination of applicability for 60 Washington Street. That the request of the applicant is going to be continued to, I believe, our next meeting.
Deborah, what time did we have a new request for determination of applicability that was filed today? What time did that go for, Deborah?
Let's see here. Well, that one is,
Was that 7:20?
that's 158 Farm,
Yep,
right?
yes.
And that is an RDA. So,
This is for our November 2nd meeting.
correct.
Well, we didn't necessarily set a time for that yet.
Well, we did because she had to advertise it.
Oh, we
I'm
already did today.
advertising it tomorrow, Joyce, so you tell me.
Okay, so why don't we put that on at 7:20?
Okay,
Is that gonna take a lot of time? What do you think?
No, it won't. It will take 10, 15 minutes maybe.
Okay. So at 7:35, we can do another one.
Yep.
we
So,
did have, also, we did have an ORAD extension come in late, was sent Federal Express, and that is, for 60 Meadowbrook Road and 0 Coolidge. So I don't know what kind of time you want to allocate to that.
I think that will go on discussion.
Okay,
oh, it's we don't have to, it's not a
It's
hearing.
not a public hearing, it's just they're requesting an extension. That
Oh.
was, LEC has reflagged some of that wetland and have submitted a revised plan. I'm gonna set up a time to walk the revised line, and they would like to include the revised plan as part of the amendment. The revisions, a lot of the revisions are simply extending the wetlands, not
Okay.
lessening them.
Fine, so that we don't have to worry about. So 7:35 for 60 Washington Street.
Yes,
Okay, I move that we continue the request for determination of applicability hearing to 7:35 on November 2nd, 2023.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Kurt,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay. we got that done. We got a few minutes here just to move on before we get to some longer discussion. I want to bring up the let's see. I'm going to bring up maybe I'll share the screen of, I don't know if people had a chance to look at this new legislation that's before the House. It is, let's see, where do we got it here? Okay. Let me share my screen. Okay, there is a House bill. I assume you guys see it here. I don't know how legible it is.
Yep,
It's an
I can read
act.
it.
What's that? I can make
It
it
is
large.
readable.
Okay. Where's my cursor? There it is. This is it. It's not big. It basically, for those of you, depending on your familiarity with the 40B applications, a major issue of whether you want to overcome any of the sort of regional need for affordable housing, there's a category called local needs that can help advocate for local concerns in the permitting of a 40B project that is generally only permitted based on state level regulations. So this proposal here would allow our local regulations, local wetlands bylaw, to be elevated to the level of something that's considered a local need, that will have much greater weight in the permitting, in the comprehensive permit process for an affordable housing project. And that's particularly useful, obviously, for us with local wells and septic and things like that. And therefore, the protection of groundwater quality and quantity is particularly important, and wetlands play a good role in that, and pollution prevention. So this would seem to me, I have no idea how what the level of support is at the House, but it would seem useful for us to send in a letter of support for this legislation. I haven't had a chance to send an email to see what the MACC is doing in terms of organizing people about this, but I called in, but the person wasn't there. I have to send an email. But that's my suggestion, is that we would vote to write in something saying that supports it and it helps with the important values of that were the interest for us, especially for stormwater management, all the many interests that we protect with wetlands. Any comments and questions or thoughts?
Michael, I think this is great, just because anything that kind of strengthens the ability for for us as a town to protect the wetlands with these 40Bs would obviously be great.
Yep.
I'm totally in favor. Thank you for flagging it, and I think it's a good idea to send a letter of support.
Michael, did the commission or did MACC support this legislation last session? Do you know?
I don't know if it was there last session.
It was
Okay.
last session.
There was a link to
Then I missed it.
Yeah, it was reported out favorably out of the municipalities committee last session. But it didn't end up passing. I mean, it didn't end up getting voted on the floor. It didn't make it all the way through the rest of the process. Not uncommon for bills to
Yes, I gather.
and to file, but I was just curious.
Yeah, no, I'll try to see if I have the time. I'll send an email to MACC to see what they're doing or whatever. But yeah, no, in general, if people see this kind of stuff, this came to me through some residents, and and also then eventually through the town. I heard it from two different places just recently. So yeah, I guess it's interesting. It's tough to be on top of everything. Before I go to the public, does anybody else on the commission want to speak? I do come back. I'll ask Zach, you want to speak before then I can come back.
Hi, this is Zach McBride, 6 Maple Street, also on zoning board. I just want to say that I support you writing a letter of support for this bill. I think it would be, to Carol's point, valuable, and as someone on ZBA, I think it gives us more levers to use when we're reviewing projects.
Okay. Thank you. Appreciate that. Anybody else from the public or from the commission want to speak? I can't see everybody, so please just speak up.
Oh, I guess I do have a question. Who would we be sending a letter to? Does it matter what stage the bill is in?
There's a place where you file, there's a formal place where you file testimony or support.
Okay.
There's a link for that we'll follow. It's due next week.
Yeah, it looks like the public hearing occurred 2 days ago.
Right, that's why, yeah.
But yeah, anyone could submit testimony at any time in writing.
Yeah, no, there's a link online that where these places where all these bills are listed, where you send an email with your you could do it by email. We could send a formal letter support and some rationale.
It says they'll accept it until October 24th. I'm sure you knew that.
Right, exactly. Yeah, I thought the 23rd, but whatever it is, I know we got to do it quickly. That's why I pushed it onto tonight's agenda, and I'd basically write a letter of support that would list the particular interests of the Wetland Protection Act that are important for our town. Mary, you can certainly speak up.
Yeah, thanks, Michael. I am very happy to hear that you guys are supportive of this. I think that, as Zach said, it gives the ZBA a little bit more to lean on if these 40B projects come in front of them. And I think that relying on some of the state standards, when the state standards don't really consider municipalities like Sherborn, where there's no public water or public sewer yet, it's really important that we can protect, adjacent properties, not just the ones that are kind of being constructed. So thank you for supporting it.
And I'll thank you and Brian for also bringing it to our attention. Yes, it'll be nice if even some other regs, even Board of Health regs, could also be elevated to this. But who knows what the odds of passage for this thing? As I guess, as Kurt said, didn't get too far last year. So we'll see.
It actually did. There's like thousands of bills filed. It actually did make it fairly far. It just didn't make it all the way to the end. So.
Okay, we can only hope.
Michael, can I make one more comment?
Sure.
So I happen to be listening to hearing that's going on in Dover right now for a scattered 40B on 4 parcels that are, I don't know if they're all contiguous, but they're definitely like in the same neighborhood, but it's called a scattered 40B. And all 4 of the houses are going to be, waiving the local bylaw on the wetland setback. And all of them are going to be mounded high enough up so that they can have basements with, a mounded septic. And I was listening to some of the neighbors' concerns, and I think a law like this would really go a long way to, protecting their wells, and their wetlands. So, it's not just for us. I think it's for a lot of neighborhoods that are wet, where parcels are scooped up and, developed under the 40B, application process.
Yeah, no, that brings up the issue for towns like Dover and Sherborn of the fact that, as I said before, something related to Board of Health regulations should be a parallel thing, would be important too, to ensure the quality of of sewer treatment, septic treatment. Okay, Zach, did you want to say something else, or you just didn't take your hand down? Okay. Is there any other comments from anybody?
I have just a general comment, kind of a related comment, which is there's another bill that the Boston Globe just wrote about that has to do with protecting private drinking wells. And even though that's not a primary focus of Conservation Commission, we might at some point take a look at how we can support that, because it's so interrelated to groundwater contamination, the role of wetlands in taking up, effluent, taking up the contaminants from septic systems. That one's called S482 and then /H902. And I think it was introduced last year and it's been introduced again. And the Globe just did a story about it. So maybe it'll finally have some traction.
Maybe you should write it into the Board of Health. I mean, so that they can make sure that Board of Health and Groundwater Protection Committee.
Yeah, they really, I hope they're on top of it.
Well, I'm saying write to both of them with the article, because we can't all keep track of everything. So I would suggest if you have a reference to the article, just write to the Board of Health and Groundwater Protection. And because it would be more meaningful to get the letter of support from those two groups than Concom. And they could also approach their Board of Health. There's also the Massachusetts Association that could weigh in. I imagine they know about it. Okay, I move to the Conservation Commission supports this legislation, and we write a letter of support to the legislature.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Let me run this thing here. Michael, I can't see everybody, so there we go. Kurt.
I abstain.
Oh, okay. I guess I was gonna ask why, but I guess that's not my prerogative. Matt? What?
So I also sit on the Sherborn Affordable Housing Trust, and then also in my other life outside of here, I involved in affordable housing. So I'm just I completely understand why the Conservation Commission would support this legislation, but so I'm not going to vote against it. But
Okay.
yeah, but I
See
don't
what-
not going to support it myself.
Matt?
Matt supports it and votes aye.
Okay. Steve?
Aye.
Carol?
Aye.
Jacob?
Aye.
Courtney?
Aye.
Okay, we got a 6-0-1 vote. I will, I guess I'll probably just try to do that letter. But I gotta do it quick.
Michael, could I take a look at the draft before it goes out, please?
Sure. You want to write the draft?
Not particularly, but I'll edit it and review it.
Shucks. Oh, God. You sure?
Pretty sure, yeah.
Okay. I'm always trying to practice my management skills of delegation.
Well done. You're awfully good.
Yeah, right. I failed. I could be more persevering and say, hey, I do all the other stuff. Okay. Let's see now. Going on to, let's see, I got to go to our agenda here. Okay, we got a couple of hearings to continue here. I am reopening the continued public hearing, the notice of intent, DEP file number 283047 for Lot B, Hunting Lane. I'm reopening that hearing. And then at the request of the applicant, we are continuing that hearing. Let's see, what time do we want to do that, Joyce? You're muted.
Do the same setup, 8 o'clock for regulations and 8:05 for Lot B.
Because the 60 Washington Street, 735, we will have some other things to do. Okay, so we could do it at 8 o'clock next. That'll be enough. So does the 25 minutes enough for Washington Street and any other stuff, or should we?
That should be enough.
Yeah, I guess we could always slide the two as it is. Okay. I move that we continue the hearing on Hunting Lane to 8 o'clock on November 2nd.
So we would do 8:05 and do the regulations at 8?
Oh, yeah. Well, oh,
In
yeah,
in case they continue again?
gotcha. Okay, so we'll do 8:05. I've revised my motion. I move to open the hearing to move the hearing to continue the hearing to 8:05 on November 2nd, 2023. Sorry about that. Thank you. Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I. Kurt,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay. I'm now gonna open the continued hearing on the Sherborn wetland regulation, discussion of possible amendments. And again, given the agenda in my own time, we don't have much new to say other than if people want to comment on the current draft at some point. But at this point, I suggest we continue this hearing until 8 o'clock on on November 2nd, 2023.
All right, second.
Okay. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, I. Kurt,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay. Let's see. Got all those done. The announcements. We have only two things left: the Farm Road Homes and minutes. The minutes will not take long, so I'm going to share the screen before we move to the last item. Then let me pull up minutes wherever they are. Okay. Whoops. All right, for delay here. Thought I had it opened already. Okay, we're trying to chip away now at 2023. We should start be doing more of this stuff here. So, presuming that many people haven't read that already, I can do the normal thing if you guys do it here. Is this large enough for people?
A little more would be great.
Okay. Larger or good enough? I can do more.
It's okay for me.
Okay, chime in when you're finished with this page. We had a few pages here.
Looks good to me.
Thank you.
Good.
Yeah, I wasn't at this, Michael, so I'll just look for typos, but you can just keep going.
Okay. Here's the next page.
Michael, there's a typo in under 0 Maple Street in the last paragraph where it says JH recommended leaf mulch for stabilization of the planting area while the ground cover fills in. So it's
Only while away the day.
so there's an extra while the. Also, don't we usually, shouldn't we have lines between paragraphs, like add a line space? It's kind of running.
I'm not entertaining formatting this.
Excuse me?
I'm not entertaining reformatting this. You mean you want blank lines somewhere?
No, I mean, that's the standard.
I don't know. I thought this was the standard but whatever. I'm not gonna, we'll see what the other ones look like.
What did you mean, Carol?
Just in documents in general, when you go to a new paragraph, there's usually an added, a little bit of line.
Okay. All right. I'll
Everything
watch.
is just very cramped and hard to scan.
Gotcha. I'll watch for that.
Okay to me?
Yeah.
Michael, at the bottom, where it says the NOI for 21 Spywood Road, should that be that should not be under the bullet point above it, correct?
Correct.
That should,
Right.
I don't see any other typos or anything. I'm not sure why the Word has flagged the term undisturbed. Maybe, it needs to decide if an undisturbed 100-foot buffer zone, that must be the grammar tracker that's doing that.
Never. Okay.
I see an inconsistent use of dash types, which I'm not going to call out, so therefore we don't have to fix it.
Thank you. I'm so pleased to hear that. Okay, I move that we approve the April 13th, 2023 minutes as edited.
Second.
Any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. Michael, aye. Keep hearing of Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Steve,
Hi.
Matt,
Aye.
Kurt.
aye.
Okay. So, got that done. Let's go to let's see what we got here. Last agenda item, oops. I'm gonna share in our ongoing giving the ZBA process on the 40B project for Farm Road Homes. We, as I sent out based on our last meeting, I sent some comments in on for the peer reviewer related to stormwater review related to the more complicated issue of doing all this, of seeing whether the project meets the DEP stormwater standards, which is a fairly complicated analysis based on everything there about given whatever the required rainfalls of different amounts are, that that essentially, I think I would say that the overall goal is that the pre-project hydrology, in terms of where waters flow and leave the property, is not changed by the project. And so that the pre and post hydrology are similar both in quantity and timing and directionality in terms of which ways to go. And all the engineers have fun designing these things based on the impervious surfaces and changing in the grading and whatnot. And based on modeling regarding 50, 100-year rainfalls and treatment of the water, depending on and such as it comes off of impervious surfaces. So there's probably an inch thick document or so that's being reviewed. And to meet that, and we sent some concerns about that it factored in the issues of the how the pond works as a storage, that it's not overburdened, and that it's factored in into that analysis, as well as the fact that they seem to have some stormwater overflow possibly going into a buffer zone. And I guess what it should have here is I should get both things on the screen here, the plan as well. And so you'll see that when I pull up the list of comments, but then there's other issues for us to comment on, as we talked about in our last meeting. Carol did a draft of which, for notes of the issues there. I've written on some comments there. Where in the world is the plan? There it is. Let's see here. I'm just going to try to see. Okay. I don't know if there's better plans. I'm just pulling them up. It's taking a little while because they're big files. Okay, let's see. Share. So I'd like to see if we can send some additional comments in. Whoops, did it work? Are you seeing two things side by side?
Yes.
Okay. Now what you have here is a mixture of, this was something Carol wrote that I then started marking up with some of my own, just my personal commenting on this. And if anybody read the document at the end, I mean, I added some other things that weren't included that from my notes. At the very end is also the email that I sent about the stormwater issues. I suggest for tonight, unless people have other ideas, is to walk through these issues and see if we can flesh out some of these things, and come to an agreement on another submittal to the ZBA with some comments. Is this large enough? Should I increase the size of this? Does that help? We can come to the, as needed, I can make the plans larger. Just so everybody understands that there are two wetlands on this plan, on this property. There is along the entire west side of the property is a set of a long sort of an intermittent stream and wetlands here, extends into this whole set of wetlands off further west, for which there's no planned activity in that, except for a little bit of grading here for the septic field. So the septic field lies outside of the buffer zone. And then the other wetland of concern is the isolated land subject to flooding here with its buffer zone under the local bylaw. there is no buffer zone under the state regulations. As we discussed last time, we could state that we could reword that basically there's a bit of work in unaltered and various unaltered buffer zone, in particular around the pond. And I guess we could put in some square footage numbers. I don't know, Joyce, whether we did that. I guess I see. Brian, is it a comment related to this before we walk through these comments? Some overarching comment that you want to make, Brian? Or you're just holding your hand up for the moment?
I'm just holding my hand up. I think at the end of this, I just had an overreaching comment on this. I wanted to make sure that, number one, the commission members were aware that we've been critiquing the applications, and those critiques are provided on the town's land development page.
Ah, okay.
And those would include a litany of identified errors, omissions, and misrepresentations that were included in the original application, which we were thanked for by the applicant, who then modified and refiled his stormwater plan. So if you're commenting on the stormwater plan, you should make sure you guys are commenting on his revised version, because we found dozens of errors in the original.
Okay, we are not, essentially, none of our comments are that stormwater specific, but it's good to know. Thank you for your due diligence on that. Because right, we're waiting to see what the peer review comes forth, and it'll be interesting to read what you guys did. Okay, but thank you for that work. So, okay, I suggest we sort of walk through this and see how far we can get through this and see what we could all agree on.
Michael, can I ask a quick question? For some reason, by the way, when I look at it on the drive, I can't see your edits, but I can see them as you're showing them now. The paragraph at the beginning, did you move that someplace else? I felt like it was important for people to kind of get an overall context of the way the surface water moves, and the fact that it then connects with a much larger interconnected wetland. So if we don't want to leave it there, I think that we should put it somewhere. It gives people context for some of the importance of protection here.
I guess I felt like, since we're writing to the ZBA, who is immersed in this, and everybody else who's reading this is immersed in the project, that they did not need this. And plus, we'd have to go add to this. I didn't feel like, I guess I didn't feel like wordsmithing it, because I felt like I would have to, for me, that it has to be expanded on, like there's more than one wetland. I guess it wasn't, I guess people can vote in whether they want to do that. But I think it would need to get expanded and corrected. And I didn't think it was worth it.
If somebody's willing to do that, I think it'd be good. I don't think we should ever make the assumption that other boards understand the wetland issues the way we do. And it doesn't take up that much real estate in a letter like this to just remind them of it.
Well, if you want to clean it up a little bit more, since it's missing about one wetland, there's the whole wetlands on the west side that are on the property, for example.
Okay.
So we can decide that we can try to spend the energy to clean it up. It's more a matter of, I'd rather focus my energy on the specific conditions and issues. But you could see whether you want to clean that up about that concern.
You know, maybe Joyce, if you don't mind, maybe I'll send some email back and forth with you to kind of capture that about the wetlands on the west side. It's been a while since I did the site walk. It would be great to get your input on that.
Sure.
I'm suddenly seeing people there. Some people know I do not, maybe others deal with comment and chats. I don't deal with the chat. Okay, Terry, did you want to comment, say something?
Yeah, it seemed in case someone looked at this particular set of commentary in a standalone fashion, that I kind of flex more in Carol's direction, that a brief bit of context could have its own value if you weren't reading an entire series of documents. Just one consideration.
No, I think we're settled on that. There's going to be something. Something will be put up front. We're agreed to that there. I'm going to move on since we've got a number of points here. The first one is as basically just probably highlighting what it is that's being disturbed in terms of wetland issues. We could put in some square footage or ask for that, but do some estimates of that. And normally we would ask for mitigation of work done in a buffer zone. But the question is how we wrap that in later, so we can come to that when we maybe come back after we go through all the points. There's a stormwater point here that Carol made that I guess I'd like to fold it. That I think it's covered by the thing below, but we'll come back to the stormwater stuff. Wildlife habitat evaluation. This is going to be this is a tricky one for me. I don't know what others think. I feel like I'm not sure what we would ask for specifically. And the whole idea of CARD is, I guess, after we talked about it at the last meeting and my own reflection, curious what others think. That the buffer zone alterations that are being done around the pond in an area that's basically meadow, or that's managed meadow that has been mowed repeatedly. There's some tree cutting and whatever else, probably in the upper area here. Let's see. And then there's about 300 or 400 feet between the buffer zone of this area and the buffer zone of the wetlands to the west. Probably more than 300 feet, 400. I'm not so sure what to ask for on that, and what that specifically would look like. When I read the most evaluations that the EP has, they're basically detailed and summary ones that are for work done in resource areas. And there's a lot, when you look at the factors that they look for, it's like habitat. Are there trees? Are there rocks? Are there this or that? There's not a lot of that evident in the buffer zone here that we're dealing with. So my first inclination, and I'm open to other people's thinking, is that I'm not sure whether to ask for this. In terms of what we would concretely say it would consist of, and then what would be the outcome in terms of actual conditions. I'll step back and say, I view that for the most part, this project is not going to change based on these on wetland issues. It's a matter of whether there's some conditioning that we could put in there to shape it. And then so it comes back to me on the habitat, other than maybe the kind of thing of what kind of landscaping you would do in the altered buffer zone, that the plantings and everything else would be favoring sort of wildlife habitat in terms of food or shelter or cover, that I think that those habitat issues would be reflected in the next point, where we talk about what conditions we'd like to see in any landscaping in the altered buffer zone.
Michael, can I comment
Yes.
on the habitat?
Sure, no, that's all about, I'm through.
Yeah, I mean, the reason I think this is important is, I mean, honestly, we have no idea. We really know very little about the habitat and that wetland in that pond. You know, for all we know, there could be rare turtles in there and that are trying to migrate from there to the wetlands over to the west. I feel like this is a pretty fairly big, dense development. The roadway can be a barrier to movement for small animals. And I think it's completely appropriate to ask for a wildlife habitat evaluation. I do understand what you're saying. I think if I were to summarize your argument, is essentially there's not enough incursion into the wetland to merit the wildlife habitat evaluation. But I think there's an argument to be made that it should be, because a lot of wildlife uses the adjacent buffer zone as well as the adjacent uplands.
I'm
And
a
it's
little
a big project, you know?
No, I'm a little stuck. It's a wildlife habitat evaluation, which is different than identifying the creatures. That's the difference that I also struggle with, is that the interests of the Wetland Protection Act are for habitat. And
When I remember when we had that other 40B on Route 16, I went through the whole list for the wildlife habitat evaluation, and they do evaluate that you do in that checklist. You look at plants, but you also look at some specific animals. Have you looked at that evaluation checklist lately?
Yes, I did just today.
So is my memory correct? My understanding was you do look at animals.
No, I have it here, I can share it, but
There's a long checklist that you can go through of different things.
yes, but almost all of them are habitat related. All of them are habitat related. And that I can't, I'm trying to.
Maybe Joyce, do you have any insights on this to clarify it for us?
So I'm reading right through it. I mean, you could say it's plant inventory of plants.
Yeah.
It's
predominantly habitat related, so plants or habitat or structure.
Soils.
I remember they did have things like mink, though. They like evidence of I remember we were looking at that for the fields of Sherborn, where there's evidence of burrows of mink and things like that.
There's an issue of sanding water. I'm looking at the detailed one.
Yeah.
They look at flat rocks, silt, whatever. What I found interesting is that it's almost all around. You can look for presence of nests, turtle nesting sites.
Oh, okay.
And dens, if there are any.
Okay.
And whether it's within 100 feet or 200 feet of nests and things. So you can look for these actual evidence of them. But in that, I guess I feel like for that pond, it's fairly straightforward, having walked around the pond. that I guess I feel it's a little I don't know. I guess I'm curious what others think. I understand your point, but I find it if this was a more particular.
Michael, I would just chime in, taking a step back to think about what the point is of these comments, and I think there's sort of two ways to submit comments like this. One would be to really focus on the 1, 2, 3, or 4 most important critical comments things that we have more certainty or we can speak more definitively to. The other approach would be more like the kitchen sink approach and just throw as much in as possible. So without commenting on the importance of this particular comment as a standalone bullet point, if it rises to the level as some of these other comments, then maybe it should have its own bullet point. But if it's something that we can touch on, like you said, if we can sort of fold into the next bullet point because it talks about landscaping, and we don't, like you said, also we don't have a specific you know, a recommendation or strong ask the way we do on some of these other points, it might make more sense to fold it in, but you know, I don't I don't actually have strong enough opinions on whether it should be, you know, its own discussion point or not, but that's just one thought, I think, in terms of the structure of these comments.
Okay, others? On the commission? Like, you have to speak up. See everybody.
Steve, I'd sort of
Speak.
lean towards Carol's arguments. But I know that it's sort of been mowed and all that, but it's still, there's creatures in the pond. There's they maybe they're. I agree with Carol to be evaluated.
Well, it's, and what's going to be the outcome of it's a habitat evaluation.
But I mean, that we don't know until they evaluate it. I guess that's, to me, it's like, let's get the information and then we can figure out what that means for the guidance. I just feel like there's a vacuum of information right now.
Yeah, I guess. Okay, well, we might just have different opinions. Other people on the commission?
So what, I just want to ask, because I'm just wondering, Carol, what do you feel would trigger a wildlife habitat evaluation? They're not impacting the wetlands. What would you gain from doing this? Is this something that you normally do on projects that have get into the buffer zone?
No, because we usually have much smaller projects.
But the bulk of the project is outside the buffer zone.
Right, I agree with that. But on the other hand, I mean, the science certainly shows that there are lots of species that actually do rely on habitat outside the buffer zone for things like wildlife corridor migrations.
So the wildlife corridor there, I mean, they're maintaining a corridor around the isolated wetland. I'm just trying to, I just want to make sure that it's not a comment we're going to throw out there that's a beyond, you know, that's what meaningful, I'm just trying to be sure what meaningful information we would gather from it, because we can, you know, they aren't stopping the corridor around the wetland. They aren't going right up to the edge of the wetland so that there's no access from one side of that isolated wetland to the larger wetland that's behind it. And there's about
that. I mean, there's a between the. I'm thinking more of the wetlands that are outside, that are, you know, outside of jurisdiction, but they're on the adjacent land. I mean, they're connected, I guess, through whatever that waterway is.
You mean across the street?
No, down over to where the Moors live, in that direction.
Okay, so there's about 700 feet between the two wetlands. So you're saying you're concerned about what wildlife might go across the property?
Yeah, I'm concerned that there may be enough barriers there between the house, you know, the buildings and the driveway. And I haven't looked carefully at the grading, and I don't even know if all of the grading is completed, to make sure that there aren't barriers there.
I think there will be barriers. Without a doubt, I think we know that there will be extensive barriers.
Well, when we did on Coolidge, for instance, we actually had, you know, there was a culvert underneath the road, and I think it was more in jurisdiction, but why wouldn't we encourage the developer, in this case, even if it isn't in jurisdiction, say, you know, we know that this is a wildlife corridor and we want you to put in a you know, a culvert, a wildlife friendly culvert under that driveway. I mean, if we have this information, we're in a position to make recommendations like that.
I guess I don't see where a culvert would fit here versus what we had in the other case, and given the distance, and they were much more, I guess I guess I don't see where we would go with that information, that even from a habitat evaluation and knowing that there are frogs or they're this or that we would lead to anything that would say that there could be, because there's so much in between these two wetlands. There's a house there that it's not like it's conducive. And almost, I think the buffer zones almost overlapped on the last one that we got that we got through. That I guess, okay, well, I should say, I mean, I sort of made myself clear about what I think. What do other commissioners think about this?
Or no fences that'll get in the way of wildlife moving around in the buffer zones. Just because there's so many different and incomplete landscaping plans, at least from what I've seen so far.
I mean, I'm more for I'm certainly for, as I said there, on the landscaping plan, making all sorts of conditions about no fencing or whatever it is, or I'm not sure we want to encourage them to go climb up the berm and go onto the driveway into the project versus go the other way.
Sure, yeah, I agree with that.
But I think that in terms of the landscaping, I think we can make specific recommendations about how they treat that buffer zone. The question is whether we need to have a study is part of what I get at, and it's.
What does a study mean? I guess one thing I would like to know is what actually lives in what is basically it's a vernal pool. Maybe, I don't know, meets the size requirements or whatever that, but do we even know what lives in there?
Well, what difference would it make to you? What would we do differently, or what could we do differently based on that information? Because I don't want to, as I've gotten in trouble before in other commission evaluations with other people, I tend to say, what would it lead to having that knowledge?
Oh, perhaps there's some animals in there that we're not aware of. And I wouldn't want to shut the door on you know, I'd like to have some kind of evaluation of that habitat, whether it's more informal or formal, I don't know. But if we don't know what's there, then it's a little hard to.
But we're asking for a wildlife evaluation, not a habitat evaluation. We're asking for a wildlife evaluation, which is a little different.
Wildlife.
That's I'm always worried about that regulatory line.
Well, wildlife lives in wildlife habitat, so to me, it might be a distinction without a difference to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for instance, if we found turtle nesting areas, we might have a different recommendation about the landscaping.
Would we? What would we do?
Michael, that's the point. You get somebody in who actually is, you know, an ecologist who would be able to make the recommendation.
Okay, see your point. Others on the commission before I go to the public? Okay, Brian and then Tom.
Thank you, Brian Moore, 49 Farm Road. That's my property on the left side of the map in the frame there. There's a couple things I'd like to point out. Number one, the part of this plan, I think the Conservation Commission can weigh in on some obvious issues without necessarily getting bogged down in the muck, so to speak, no pun intended. There's a massive amount of clear cutting that is going to take place immediately adjacent to the buffer zone on the western side, and then back along the town forest side of the parcel. And really the jurisdictional investigation on the land ceased at the property line. I don't think that they went into town forest and onto our land to look for things like riverfront or anything like that. I think they just flagged the wetland vegetative border, like where they found it. And if there were such things as riverfront shortly beyond those markers, that would very much put different obligations on the developer in terms of having to protect that surface water. So if there's a way to include in your comments the fact that, you know, it doesn't seem as anyone has done any kind of review for river frontage outside of the property line that could impact those septic leach fields, et cetera. And also the ground mounted solar arrays and the private wells are going to put in, they're going to have to clear cut like 5, 6 acres, 7 acres to put that in. And that's all very close to wet area or area that's subject to flooding. And I don't need to tell you guys how important shade is for the wetlands. It's a well-published thing in Massachusetts and elsewhere that they want, you know, that's one of the reasons they protect those habitats. And that buffer zone is because it's so close to the wetlands and it is so impactful. So hopefully the commission can take a look at all the different plans and just say they are either they do or they do not have concerns about such extensive clear cutting so close to these resource areas. And the last point I'd like to add is that these plans depict filling and grading of areas that are subject to flooding when you look at ortho imagery that's available online. It wasn't put into the plans and it wasn't flagged as wetlands because it's area that's subject to flooding and doesn't necessarily result in the vegetative growth that gets flagged. But we provided on numerous occasions ortho imagery that shows the flooding of that pond going over where that current road is proposed. So you would essentially be filling a jurisdictional area if this is built as proposed. So thank you for hearing my comments. I appreciate it.
I'd say in response to some of it, that the issue of what resources are there, riverfront or others, was looked at. And so this is the limit of the resource areas. And as to some of the clear cutting, that's beyond our jurisdiction. As to the flooding area there, it's that's hopefully going to be dealt with by will be dealt with by the stormwater review, and that we'll get the comment on that once we see it. Tom?
Thank you, Tom Trainer, 97 Washington Street. Thank you your group for so diligently studying this proposed development. I just want to maybe point something out, or maybe check to make sure you're aware, just procedurally, where this project is at with the ZBA, who, you know, has the role to represent all our boards and committees for the town to approve or not approve a comprehensive permit for this development. The ZBA started their hearings August 1st, and I believe they have 6 months, 180 days to finalize and rule, and so they're approximately midway, almost in that. It sounds like you haven't sent in any comments yet. I'm also chair of the groundwater committee. We've sent in comments July 31st and September 18th, and they're posted on the land development webpage. I hope you get comments in soon. The ZBA has a peer reviewer, Tetra Tech, that typically takes 2 to 3 weeks to review comments from town boards. And the next hearing is Tuesday, November 7th, where I believe they're going to be spending time on stormwater and groundwater. So I just wanted to make sure you're well aware that the train has left the station, and that's where the ZBA review is at. If people haven't had a chance to follow the previous meetings, thank you.
Sure. Mary, are you going to make a comment on wildlife issues?
I am. Is that okay?
Sure.
So I just wanted to point out, and I've been doing some research. I haven't found it yet, but I believe that Mass Audubon did a study a few years ago tracking deer commuter routes kind of in the land between Broadmoor and Town Center. And I know that because they called to ask if they could come on our property to track the scat and, see where they were going. So I think that, if I can find that, that might be useful, and I'll try to hustle to see if I can get that. The other thing is there was a Mass Audubon Harvard study that just came out about ground mounted solar. And I realized that the solar isn't proposed in the wetlands or the buffer, but I do think it impacts habitat. And even Mass Audubon is recommending that you don't do the ground mounted solar for the very reasons that chopping down 5 acres of forest is not good for anybody. And I find it somewhat ironic that the developer is on the board at Mass Audubon, so I may make this available to him so that he's aware of that policy work. And then the second thing I wanted to mention was, if you go by that pond anytime during the spring, the peepers are loud and audible, and it hasn't been mowed in 2 or 3, I think maybe a year and a half or almost 2 years, it hasn't been mowed. And if anybody has mowed a wet meadow after not mowing it for a while, there's certainly a lot of things that move in there. So it might be worth, going back over and doing a site walk, checking out what is there. And, I would encourage us to protect it as much as we can. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Michael, to Tom's comment, I would just say, I do feel like we're a bit behind the 8 ball here, and we need to, I think I would recommend that we finalize this as best we can and get it over and be as comprehensive as possible. I think Groundwater their last letter was very, it provided a strong context. It was, detailed, and I think that's something for us to emulate rather than stripping back information. Let's see if there's anything else we need to expand, but at the very least get this, agreed on and get it over there.
This is the most contentious issue. Come back to it.
Michael, for some reason I'm having trouble hearing you. And I don't know.
Sorry. Is that better now, or?
Yes, that is.
Whether the issue is the purpose of is to try to reach some sort of, let's see, I'm going to do reviewing. So you can see as I type. Oops, okay. That whether basically we're looking about a study about habitat and wildlife, and it's, to your point, Mary, actually, we don't have to worry about the deer since our focus is on wetland related wildlife. Study about wildlife and habitat, whether it's coming back to me, whether I'm being too narrow-minded, and people can tell me, to guide any sort of mitigation and plantings in the buffer zone and maybe beyond. And that maybe that part of that meadow could be, maybe it should be managed differently. Wildlife habitat. That maybe, I mean, I could see, it makes sense to me to ask for a study about wildlife and habitat to basically guide what the plantings are like, or how the buffer zone is plantings in altered areas.
Mitigation
How the field and how the field is. Sorry, this is just very rough. And how the field buffer zone is managed. So that at the moment, that's maybe something that might appeal to a number of us. or be some sort of practical. To me, this has a practicality. And concreteness for the peer reviewer and for the ZBA, because the ZBA is the moderator of whether any of the stuff that we put here, the ZBA has to be the one who either asks for it of the peer reviewer or wants to include it in the comprehensive permit. So we do have a gatekeeper there, and I'd like to be concrete for them. I mean, this could be reworded, but whether this principle makes sense to people. And we can come back to this, so we can get through the rest of it and then come back.
What are you saying the principle is? Basically, what you just typed is the principle you're asking people for feedback on?
Yeah.
I think that's fine. It should say plantings in altered areas.
I'll make just a small point, is the field is an altered area, and whatever's field there.
I know it's tricky. I know. Field is sort of
well, it may not be altered. I mean, we may say don't alter it, right? At all.
But it's already
what
been.
I'm saying, it's been previous altered. It's a wetland that's been altered.
Yeah, I'm trying. I guess I got to say the newly altered areas, because they're basically doing more work up here. They're doing.
I don't think you need to say newly. I think the way it was before is better. From my point of view.
To be additionally altered. I will
just leave it. No, just leave it the way it was. I'm sorry, I raised a point.
So let's get redone, but okay. Let's move on then. Unless people want to comment, we'll come back to all this if people want to comment. One of the other issues is that they're doing all of this work in this outer buffer zone, primarily, some inner, where they're doing grading, where they're putting in the road, they're putting in some houses. There's a whole bunch of grading. There's a detention pond, where that detention pond can be turned into a rain garden. I forgot to put that in there. Whether we have to put in some, I guess this condition here, detention pond, I think it's C, detention pond C, whether that can be made into more of a rain garden or some other habitat kind of friendly. I want to come back to this one, but whether this is just a principle of asking some measures about how that area is then re-landscaped. And I just want to get through the whole list and then come back to this one. I'm not going to, Mary, unless it's a very short comment around this thing, we're going to keep moving through this so we walk through the whole thing. Okay. This next point here that you wrote, Carol, this has been a subject of some contention, I believe, that there's somehow this hydrologic link between here, this pond, going all the way to the wetlands to the west. There's a USGS map that showed some sort of blue line at the past. There's been no field evidence of this connectivity, or this connection there. There was some sort of stormwater management issue where it was going across Farm Pond and then going along the edge of across Farm Road and then going along the edge of Farm Road, and then that got changed by DPW, and plus they're not supposed to be doing it anyway across the street.
Was there a ditch there along Farm Road on that side though? That was what it looked like on the map. But Joyce, I know you checked it out. Was that ditch wet?
There was no ditch. If there was a ditch, we would have a discussion, but there was no ditch along the frontage of Farm Road.
So I would drop this altogether. That is something that's been brought up, but I think people that this would be this is not an issue anymore. There was some, right, it was a little trickier in the past when there was some stormwater management there, but that's been changed.
What do you mean? What was there then? Was there just a culvert coming under Farm Road? What are you?
Yes, there was a culvert, there is a culvert under Farm Road. And then it somehow drained there, but that's been blocked off.
But didn't I thought
So
that
there was if there was the water that came under, if there was water that came through the culvert, it would go overland. And if you remember, there was a culvert under the driveway.
yes, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so then it would go, whatever came across Farm Road or through the culvert would end up eventually through the culvert and out that ditch.
Yeah. And did it get cut off altogether though? Because I remember we were trying to protect that little wetland area because that was fed by the culvert under the driveway.
Yeah, that we still have that there, and they are still doing that. But this source of groundwater that's going across Farm Road is supposed to be managed in the sense that the house where it was generated from the basement, that they're supposed to put it somewhere else. And that no longer exists, basically, for whatever reason, how it was dealt with by DPW. But I don't feel like spending time on that issue any longer.
Michael, may I jump in?
Sure, if it's about that
Sorry.
issue, I'm not going to give a lot of time on it, to be honest.
Okay, that's fine, but it's relevant because the house that's been built at 53 Farm Road, which is the new big house right on the road down there, just above that culvert that goes under the driveway, has a pipe easement in its deed that allows for stormwater from this project down towards that culvert. And that's in the deed, and that's been recorded with Mass Land records. And at the last ZBA hearing, the applicant for the 40B project said that he would not be availing himself of that pipe easement. And the engineer in the same meeting said that he has deliberately built a swale in front of that new house at 53 to accommodate the stormwater. So there is water that's going to be flowing down in front of that house towards the culvert, towards the wetlands, towards our well.
I agree. That issue has been, that is already a separate comment that we have about that. We want to see what's going on about that connection and what that means.
Okay. But I think so you're correct that the house across the street on Farm Road had an illicit discharge that was pushing water out onto the property, but there still is a swale there that's noted on Mass GIS.
Right, but there's not a hydrologic connection that I just crossed out that comment.
Well, it's called a hydrologic connection on Mass GIS.
It's nothing in the field. Okay, Mass GIS, a map does not prevail. What's in the field prevails.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Sorry to be a little short because we got to get through this. I'm going to move on to the septic field comment that I drafted something that I need to clean up a bit. I didn't get a chance to clean this up. As we can see here, there's a large septic field just outside of our jurisdiction. And it's up gradient of wetlands, of a significant amount of wetlands there. And there's little we can do about that situation. But I suggest, you can read what I suggest, it's very rough here, that in the past, we actually, on another project, we had a condition that we would test the groundwater, the wetlands for any contaminants before a project and then do some testing afterwards to see if there's some source coming out of the septic field. Not sure what recourse we'd have even then, but at least we can monitor this situation.
Is that the way? Oh, sorry, Rick, go ahead.
Sure, go.
Finish.
No,
is that intended to be a in perpetuity condition?
Yes.
Okay.
This is something I'd like the ZBA in some form that's cleaned up to incorporate in the comprehensive permit. At least I'm suggesting.
I think this is good, Michael. I like the addition of this. I didn't know the number of homes currently proposed, so we need to add that in to kind of quantify how big the septic field is.
I guess for the, whatever, we can find that number. I just want to get it done.
Yeah. Or we could
Uh,
just take that out, that it's, it's a large septic field for many homes.
right. Mary and Brian, are you going to comment on this?
I just had a question. Does the commission have jurisdiction over groundwater mounding and wetlands from these projects? So we expect that there will be a significant amount of groundwater mounding happening on our property in the wetlands that are directly below this. Is that within your jurisdiction?
Well, I think that you're talking about mounding because you think all the water that's going to come down. That's the mounding analysis I assume they're going to do for the septic system. And
does it impact you if our wetlands are impacted by that?
It's outside of our wetlands. I mean, I guess we haven't pushed the limit of, does the mounding stretch into the buffer zone? Last time we went through this effort of trying to say that this thing is right outside of us and therefore it will have impacts on wetlands. We were overruled.
Was that in another
project in town?
Okay.
After a lot of effort. So it's a matter of so I can't tell you that's not something.
Yeah. If I could ask in the entry comments that Carol was suggesting that we talk about the topography, because the drop from where these houses are to where the wetlands are is pretty significant. And things go downhill. That doesn't that's a easy science point.
She has that there, and right, for those who might help. Right. It'd be nice to write more, but I just want to get through this. Brian?
Yes, hi, Brian Morgan, 49 Farm Road. The mounding analysis, we critique the mounding analysis. It's in our comments to ZBA. Should be aware that they used a hydraulic conductivity that's is approximately the same as beach sand in their mounding analysis. And 2 of the 4 stormwater basins that I believe may fall under your jurisdiction, they actually haven't even done test pits at those locations. They've extrapolated from other locations. And there are several test pits. They say they've done 42, but there are several number of those 42, like 5 or 10%, where they actually haven't even done the test pit yet. They put the test pits into a table and then it says to be conducted. So if they're and it says to be conducted for Concom in their stormwater report. So if they're suggesting that they're going to be doing more test pitting to accommodate your board and haven't approached your committee and haven't approached your committee about scheduling those test pits, I would be concerned that they're going off half-cocked with their plans.
Well, I'm hoping the peer reviewer is the one who, for the stormwater standards and all that stuff. I mean, you critiqued it. I don't know whether I'd like to think that the peer reviewer would have caught the kind of things that you're talking about.
Here, the peer reviewer goes down a checklist of, did they do a stormwater or not? Yes. Did they file Concom or not? Yes. You have to actually be a little more specific when requesting peer reviewers' help, aside from just checking boxes. If you want a peer reviewer to actually look at the mounding analysis, then you should probably put that in your letter to the ZBA saying, we recommend the peer reviewer be charged with critiquing the mounding analysis and reviewing the test pit data, because otherwise they're trusting everything Deshang sends them. And I can tell you, Deshang's work is littered with errors and omissions and misrepresentations. That's a fact.
No, I'm not surprised that there's points that not covered, but I guess I am a little. I guess we'll have to talk to the ZBA. I thought the peer review was much more detailed and not just the sort of checklisting that you're doing from what I've seen in the past.
Yeah, I would check with
That
Scott
they saw
Horsley,
that they
that's-
actually did do the more substantive review of what the soils were and chosen and what all those technical inputs, that they did review those kind of things, that it wasn't.
I hope they did. I hope they do, because
That's
it was-
my hope, and I thought I saw in the past, is that they reviewed the issues that you're talking about.
Well, I would use the trust but verify method in this instance.
Well, that's
to
what
make
we'll
sure
find
that's
out
done.
when we see
Yeah.
that's where it comes
Thank
when
you.
we see the peer review.
Yeah.
And we can bring that up. Okay, anything else on the septic? Let's move on to the lighting.
Michael, again, I think that, you know, you have some specifics here that seem quite helpful.
It's my goal to just give them the words that we want to see, essentially. It's in all of this. Anybody have any comment there, or I'll have to go figure out how to combine this with some stormwater, but then there's these last 3 bullets. We've often had in the buffer zone, we've had no pesticides or fertilizers. Sometimes we've had organic fertilizers in the outer buffer zone. Do people feel one way or another about that stuff?
I think given how much wetlands there is and how it's you know, we know that the groundwater is going to be flowing toward the bigger wetlands. I would go for the no pesticides or fertilizers. You know, among other things, we want, if possible, to discourage big swaths of grass in the development. And the main reason people use pesticides and fertilizers mostly is to support grass.
Well, this is only for the buffer zone, and there's not a lot of grass.
I know, but it would hopefully, you know, it would be helpful.
I mean, we're talking about a very narrow stretch. We could suggest to them.
Well, I don't see any reason why in the buffer zone specifically, why they need to have pesticides or fertilizers. So I think I feel very comfortable with the wording of no pesticides or fertilizers in the buffer zone.
Right. I mean, we've allowed at times when people are trying to get some plantings going, that they might need some, or that we've allowed organic slow release nitrogen.
But you know what, Michael, most native plants, they actually don't thrive with fertilizer. They thrive with compost, but they don't thrive with fertilizer. So
what do others feel? Are we okay with no in the buffer zone?
I think it's a simpler message to just say no in the buffer zone.
Okay.
Should you add herbicides to that?
Well, pesticides is the broader term for herbicides and insecticides and things like that.
Well, like things like killing poison ivy with something. That's not a pesticide.
Okay, we'd be clear, I guess.
It technically is.
What? Herbicide is a pesticide.
Yes.
Right, I know. It is the umbrella term. We went through this somebody years ago. But yes, since people keep bringing it up, I guess we could be more clear. I guess I should say which. Includes herbicides. Yeah, I don't know about whether to just make a comment about that. It would be nice that the whole project doesn't use these things, given the all the stuff around there, but that's.
I mean, we could say, you know, no pesticides in the buffer zone, and that the town recommends, you know.
Well, given all the stormwater issues and everything else and where it's going, that would suggest.
Yeah.
It's the stupid way of doing this thing here.
I mean, we already know that, you know, we're getting all these algal blooms and everything that are both related to climate change, but certainly it doesn't help at all for people to put fertilizers on their lawns.
De-icing chemicals.
Michael, in the interest of time, I know that in past 40Bs, we've suggested something, and maybe Joyce, you can quickly think of something, but
We suggested calcium chloride, but I'm not
Yeah.
quite sure whether I want to be that specific at this point. Versus there's beet juices and there's this and there's that. That I can't tell whether we want to specify what they should use versus no salt.
You should probably just specify what you don't want them to use and they can find an alternative.
Right.
Yeah.
And I don't know what
also,
other,
by the way, don't we also talk, Joyce, about snow storage? No snow storage in the buffer zone for exactly that same reason. I think I've seen that in previous 40B feedback, but it's very specific.
Well,
Yeah.
typically, yeah, we try not to do snow storage in the buffer zone.
Right.
right, this is often actually, these are things that go often and for people broader to know that part of the stormwater standards is a long-term pollution prevention plan. It's one of the standards. And this is some of the stuff that often goes into these plans. There anything else besides sodium chloride that we want to avoid that we know of? Okay. Because yeah, there's so many different things now that could be nicer.
Michael, can I make a comment about the snow removal?
Sure.
So in the plan that was submitted to the ZBA, there's something about taking the snow to the town snow dump. And I don't think we have one. So you just might want to, to Joyce's point, we might want to just reiterate that the snow should not be, put in a place where, particularly if it's treated or coming off the road. So I just want to clarify that. It was clearly a cut and paste from a prior project. But I mean, if we do have a snow dump that, I don't know about, that's fine. But it just made me laugh a little bit.
Secret place. But we can't, other than saying we can't do it in the buffer zone, that's the limit to our jurisdiction.
All right, thank you.
And then if to the extent that it's put other places, it should be part of the stormwater analysis where in terms of when it melts, it goes into the stormwater system and it's treated. And there's
Could you ask the peer reviewer to look at that?
It's, I guess I'm stuck with, that's what they standardly have to do.
Okay, all right, we'll keep an eye on it.
Yes, exactly. There's a limit to how much we can get in trouble of telling them to do what they should be doing, but we'll see if they do that. There would be also asking them to follow our fill regulation for any fill that's in our jurisdiction. And suggest again for rest of project. And we would just quote our fill regulation, which is further down in this document if people want to see it. Okay. Sorry, I've gotten a little short on some people here. Just trying to get through this, as everybody suggests. We want to get something out the door. Now, stormwater stuff here and below is what was already sent to them on the stormwater. We can edit this down because we've provided information on the they have to figure out themselves what the stormwater capacity of that basin is. Going back up, see if we can get through to some closure here. There'll be some introductory summary comments that Carol can work with Joyce on. Just some descriptive comments about it that includes both wetlands and a little bit of that.
Okay.
So
Joyce, I'll send you an email. Maybe we can find some time early next week.
Yes, hopefully that, because we want to get it done next week.
Yep.
Even though, okay. I'd reword this thing here. It recommends following conditions, issues, whatever. That'll just be cleaned up. This is just describing what it is that they're altering in our jurisdiction. On capacity value, that's already covered in what we already sent them. That they need to do that. Some pictures that were sent by you, Brian, and some information that you, Brian, and Mary collected on the pond size was sent to them. And with the note also to them that that it's the peer reviewer should review that and make sure they could confirm that appropriately, since the applicant was then concerned about the source of all that material. And I said that we don't want to get into that. The peer reviewer should just make sure that they look at those issues. Okay, so that's already dealt with. Okay.
Michael, one other thing I'm wondering about is, people have mentioned that substantial forest cutting to make way for solar, and I don't know if most of that woodlands is up gradient from wetlands, and if there might be some issues with erosion, and do these need to be planted? Do those solar panels need to be underplanted? I
would say there's nothing I don't think it's within our jurisdiction to comment on that. I will tell you that the Energy and Sustainability Committee will be commenting on that.
Okay.
Is the position being that, as per the report that Mary even brought up with Audubon and others, that you don't need to go into cutting trees to meet the solar targets for Massachusetts for 2030, and that it's not recommended, and it's hopefully people are writing in, if we've written comments, or I've written comments to the state even, that they should remove any incentives for that, so that there's no, so that the DEP policy is not to is to discourage that, but there's some other incentives that don't quite fully align with that.
But I'm just bringing up a different thing.
I know, I actually don't think it's within our
erosion.
jurisdiction. I don't think it's worth,
I just don't know the topography of the site, and if there's going to be any cutting that is on steep slopes above the wetlands to the west. I'm asking if Joyce or anybody knows.
The state, there's going to be erosion control around the project from our point of view.
They're going to have a very thorough erosion control plan for the whole project, because it's very steep. And that will be part of it's mostly out of our jurisdiction, but that's going to have to be part of their stormwater plan, is to, and their operation and maintenance plan is to maybe have temporary detention basins and things like that.
I don't know. Is there anything we need to say as a reminder?
Because they already have erosion control all around. If you look on this, there's a red line here where they have erosion control around all of their work.
And does that include where the solar area and where they're cutting woods?
It goes all the way up to the top. That doesn't actually, they don't have it there.
Are they doing that? There's like kind of a steep bank.
Oh, it is very steep there.
Yeah.
But it's about 100 feet from the buffer zone.
Yeah.
I guess we could put in something about any erosion from any tree cutting. Okay. Okay, getting through this thing so we can make a run through this thing. We can always add more. People don't like the letter that gets written. There's still a few months left. We can come up with more points. This isn't the be all and end all, but it's a matter of getting at least getting it into the discussion there. So, whether oops.
Well, Michael, in terms of timing, Tom informed us that the next hearing with the peer reviewer Tetra Tech is Tuesday, November 7th. And they're gonna be focusing on stormwater and groundwater. We've had a lot of stuff about stormwater, so I think our aim should be to get this to them by, I don't know, a week.
We've already given them this. Part of the reason I did that little email last time after our last meeting was recognizing that schedule.
Mhm.
Most of what we're saying about stormwater has already been given to them.
Mhm. When do we think we can finalize this though? When is our next meeting actually?
We're not finalizing it. We're finalizing it tonight with permission to clean it up and sending this off. And if people have comments on it, whatever is sent off, or have additional thoughts at our next meeting, we can write another letter. This is not the be all and end all.
Yep.
My approach to this.
Yeah, Michael, are we going to get a chance to just take a quick look at the final letter before it goes out? Because just so much additions and deletions here, and there's so much still being left open to wording. I'd feel more comfortable taking a look at the final letter.
Okay. If there's less than a quorum who wants to do that, then we can do it and get it out before our next meeting. Although I guess our next meeting is before the ZBA. So maybe, I'm trying to think of what issues. It's more a matter for the peer reviewer to get, trying to figure out how they work with this, how they will decide our letter and what they will send to the peer reviewer. Okay, why don't we take the chance? Okay, let's plan on getting a draft and we'll review it at our next meeting. And then we can get it out and then we can finalize it at our next meeting. And there'll be a draft in the box.
Michael, would the ZBA be more likely to read and digest the letter if we got it to them sooner? Would it make sense to just have a resolution such that you and Kurt and Carol sort of go over the final draft?
I can go either way on that.
We've done that before. Yeah, we've done the commission.
Depends on how many people want to participate in the final version of this thing, which could be revised. It's not to say that we even if we send it in, that we could do edits to it and say, well, we'd like to revise it. How many people want to participate in finalizing is the question.
I'm happy to delegate that task to others.
Aren't you a nice gal? So we have Kurt. Carol, you want to do something?
Sure, because I'll do that part with Joyce.
I'd like to delegate.
What?
I'd like to. I trust you, your group that you've just named.
Fine. Then we will. Let's get through this rough thing here, and then the three of us will finalize something that you can always change your minds about at the next meeting, or enough of us do. Okay, on the wildlife stuff, we're asking for a study about what's there so that it can guide what mitigation is being done on the planting areas and the field management. The biggest question here, everything else is fairly simple, even though it needs to be cleaned up. I don't know what to say about the landscaping in the buffer zone that they're altering here, or whether to say that we can finesse that and say that until we see the study about habitat, then we can come back and make more specific recommendations about what kind of landscaping could go there.
Yeah, I think it makes sense to fold in those two bullet points together, as we had
Okay.
discussed before, not to reopen the conversation, but
Okay, gotcha. I remember.
it's kind of hard to comment on the landscaping mitigation if I need a study just to tell what we need,
Okay.
in order to make a recommendation.
Yeah, and we'll fold in some of these points, for example, like what the detention pond could be. We could put in a few suggestions about what issues might be. Okay. Shy of that, okay. Stormwater stuff will move. Okay, if everybody agrees in principle with this stuff here, and we will clean it up and edit it to the group of 3 with the help
Mike?
of
I'm sorry, I've had my hand up for a while. I just wanted to comment on the excellent point you made about the caffeine testing you want to do.
Yeah.
Could we add to that MBAS surfactants, 1,4-dioxane and PFAS? Those are all very, very common in gray water septic systems.
Right, I don't want to go too far because I only want to do a few indicators because I don't want to seem overburdening. I feel like I have to figure out which is, I'll talk to somebody. I might even talk to the person who's doing the farm pond basin study because that came up with her.
Okay.
In there to see, there's some other compound that I think she was suggesting to test.
Okay, thank you. That was my only comment. Thank you.
I don't want to get into the PFAS because that's so prevalent that opens up a whole other can of worms that is, I don't think so necessarily attributed a bull to a septic system. So that wouldn't be something that I think we should venture into.
But who's going to do that?
What's that?
Who's going to comment on the PFAS that's going to come from 32 homes?
Yeah, that I'm not sure that there's anything to be. I mean, once the septic system, even if you find it, even if we find things here, it's not clear what the recourse is.
Well, the recourse is that we have a drinking water well right down gradient of this system. Our expert is telling us that we're going to have to move our well.
Well, hopefully you'll be doing testing of your well beforehand, the project, so you have a good baseline, and then you'll see what might happen with the project over time. And hopefully this kind of testing might indicate something.
And then what?
And right.
Then we have to sue, Mary. That's what's going to happen.
Exactly. Okay. There's not a lot of recourse. Even for us, if we do this is more for, we could do an enforcement order maybe. This would be totally new territory if we find things. So.
All right, we appreciate your work, Michael, and I'm sorry things are a little testy, but we're a little
no, that's all right.
We're a little angry these days, so thank you for all your hard work, everybody.
No, it's just a matter of balancing the fact that will say I talk too much, or how do we get through this, and how do we get closure? So it's a matter of I have to both think and try to figure out how to get closure on all this stuff at the same time. And not everybody's happy with how I do it, maybe.
Well, I think we've gotten to a good place, though, Michael, where we've gone through this and we have most of the commission agreeing in principle on basically what's here. And then we'll hash out, remaining details.
Okay, then I move to accept that.
I mean, I have one comment. Sorry, before you go. Yeah. I don't know if I agree with Kurt about separating those two items. I mean, putting those two together. But I'll live with whatever you have. The two items being the evaluation of the habitat. And
yes, I have some issues too, but I figure we will work that out. But I
okay.
I didn't realize that, but I would also agree that I think the habitat evaluation is separate.
We'll have to hash that out.
Okay.
But point taken, since I somewhat agree with you. But we'll see how it goes. It can be one bigger point with two subpoints, who knows? Whatever it is, we might find something. Okay, I move that we use this work, this discussion here as the basis for us, for Carol, Kurt, and I to submit comments to the ZBA on the Farm Road Home 40B project.
Seconded.
Any further discussion? Okay, Mike, roll call vote. Michael, I, Carol,
Aye.
Matt, Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney, Steve,
Aye.
Kurt.
Aye.
Okay, I guess we have some work to do before the next meeting, and I will be in touch with Carol, Kurt, and you, Matt. Probably maybe you, Matt, first, so I can get that little letter out of the way. And
forward
get
to
back to you. And we can get out the door. Okay,
Michael, I have a separate question. I don't know what you're having on your agenda item yet, but you know, with the wetland regulation discussion, that seems to have stalled again. What is holding us up from spending some more time and finalizing some of that? Because it keeps being continued again from one meeting to the next.
right. It's partially, I haven't pressed Matt, who said he was overloaded, to comment on what the other thing is, and the other part is all the other changes that I have a whole list of that I have to compile based on earlier meetings. So it's me hanging up things with having a lot to do with my work and other personal life stuff.
Well, let me know how I can help, because I would like to get that back kind of moving
Sure.
along.
No, I regret it because there's some changes to the fill regs that are not going to be incorporated in this that we should have done. So yes, I will let you know.
Okay, we can talk about it offline, and you know, hopefully we can get our advisor back in a few meetings with us.
Okay, any other issues for tonight? Anybody, public, anybody else? In that case, I move to adjourn at 9:46.
Second.
Any further discussion? Roll call vote. Michael, I, Kurt,
Aye.
Steve,
Aye.
Carol,
Aye.
Matt,
Aye.
Jacob,
Aye.
Courtney.
Aye.
Okay, let's see. Recording stopped.